Moving on, former US President Donald Trump has made headlines with his recent praise for Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. In an interview on the Flagrant podcast, which is hosted by popular entertainers Andrew Schulz and Akash Singh, he praised Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He called him his friend and the nicest human being.
Modi, India.
Yeah.
He's a friend of mine. He's great. He's the nicest.
India. This is for you.
Oh, good. Well, I'll tell you. Do you like him or not?
Yeah.
Do you like him?
I have family on both sides of it.
Okay,
I have
well,
family
let me
that
tell
loves
you.
everything and family
I'll just
that's
tell
not.
you, though. You meet him. I know. Well, they had, before him, they were replacing him every year. It was very unstable. He came along.
He's in a lot
and
for
he's
construction.
great. He's a friend of mine. But on the outside, he looks like he's your father. He's the nicest, total killer. Because I asked him,
Yeah.
we're talking, we did a thing called Howdy Modi in Houston, Texas.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And they filled up the stadium. It was me and him. We filled up the stadium. It was beautiful. Like 80,000 people. It was going crazy. And we're walking around today. Maybe I wouldn't be as, maybe you wouldn't do that. But we're walking in the middle, waving to everybody. Anyway, but we have a very good relationship. He's the nicest human being. But we had a couple of occasions where somebody was threatening India. I said, let me help. I'm very good with those people. Let me help. I will do it. I will do it. And I will do anything necessary. We've defeated them for hundreds of years.
Wow.
He was talking about a certain country.
Yeah.
You can probably guess the country.
Yeah.
Can't fathom which.
You know the country.
Yeah.
But I said, whoa, what happened there? What happened? So, no, they're all tough and they're all smart. And some are very good people. He's a good person. There's some are good people and some aren't good people. But they're all at the top of their game.
Now, Modi and Trump have had a close relationship since the latter was first elected US President in 2017. A big landmark in that relationship was Modi's visit to America in 2019. As Trump recalled in that interview, the visit saw the Howdy Modi mega event in Houston, Texas. In front of a massive audience of around 80,000 people, Modi refashioned his election slogan in India for Trump and said, "Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar," or this time it's going to be a Trump government. This was particularly important because it came right before the 2020 US presidential elections. Then in 2020, Trump visited India for the Namaste Trump event in Gujarat. Around 100,000 people attended that event. Trump praised Modi's leadership during the event and also talked about India's progress under him. Trump also stated recently at a campaign event that he was set to meet Prime Minister Narendra Modi during the latter's visit to America this September. But that meeting didn't end up happening. Though it does seem that Trump and Modi's friendship remains strong, which will reassure some Indians if Trump is in fact re-elected to the White House in November. Our White House correspondent Rohit Sharma now joins us with more details on the story. Rohit, thanks so much for joining us. Could you tell us a little bit about what was talked about in this podcast with Donald Trump?
Well, look, President Trump was asked an open-ended question. He was asked about some of the foreign leaders and are they shark or not? And the first name that popped up in his head was of Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He called him his friend, and this is not the first time that Prime Minister Modi has been called as a friend by President Trump. He went on to talk about Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He asked one of the podcast host about if does he like Prime Minister Modi and what about his family, and so there was a little back and forth there during that about 2 minutes of President Trump talking about India and Prime Minister Modi, and he praised Prime Minister Modi. He also talked about the Howdy Modi event that was in Texas, and how they were walking hand in hand, and 80,000 some people that Trump refers to were in the crowd, in that arena that day. So look, Prime Minister Modi has obviously made an impression on President Trump, and President Trump feels that Prime Minister Modi is a dear friend and somebody he can work with. And this is not the first time he said that. But the fact that he went on to then detail about how he's a tough guy and he comes across as this father figure and a nice guy, but when push comes to shove, and he alluded to the fact that when India had trouble with its neighbors, and he didn't specify, but India obviously had an issue with Pakistan during the Balakot strikes, and what had happened then, and also during 2020 the border crisis. So, he sort of alluded to the fact that Prime Minister Modi came, on his own, and he was like, "I'll handle it," and if you look at President Trump, he changed his voice and demeanor to sort of show that Prime Minister Modi meant business. And when President Trump offered help, Prime Minister Modi said that he'll handle it, and India has dealt with this for over 100 years. So again, very very interesting conversation with Prime Minister. Sorry, very interesting conversation uh, on that podcast, and they talked about some other stuff, interesting stuff in that podcast too. But obviously, very discussed and highly discussed between the Indian American community here in the US.
So, Rohit, there's been a lot of conversation about the Trump-Modi relationship in the past, and whether Trump's praise for Modi is somehow an attempt to win over voters in the Indian American community. Could I ask you, was this something like a political ploy on Trump's behalf?
Well, look, it is. Some people might say that it was planned, or some people might say that this was one of the talking points of the campaign. But knowing President Trump, he hardly ever sticks to his talking points. He likes to wing it most of his times, and I think he genuinely meant that that Prime Minister Modi is a friend. He genuinely meant that he's a nice guy, and somebody that Prime Minister Modi has also said as a friend. He invited President Trump to India. He did this big event in the US. So there's always that camaraderie that the leaders share. That the fact that Trump talked about it 20 some days, before election, I think sort of also tells you that he also believes that India is an important nation, and he wants to probably highlight the fact that India and the US relationship would prosper under his administration.
And last question, Rohit, I have to ask you whether you think this will actually have an impact on Indian American voters.
Very, very, very discussed. A lot of forwards, a lot of tweets, a lot of text messages back and forth after he said what he said. And look, yes, this is definitely one way to get to the NRI voters, to reach out to Indian American voters, and the popularity of Prime Minister Narendra Modi is undeniable among the diaspora. So, what better way to reach to those voters who are still undecided, those voters who usually vote for Democrats, and tell them, look, I share this great relationship with Prime Minister Modi, and our relations will be amazing if he were to get elected, right? So yes, he's definitely also doing that. I don't think it was intended to, but I think this as we've seen, the Indian American community takes pride anytime any leader praises India or Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So I think Trump, in a way, is also reaching out to the Indian American voters, and stating the fact that he shares this bond. He likes Prime Minister Modi. Prime Minister Modi is a strong man. I mean, Trump called him a killer, which basically means badass, and somebody who can stand his ground. And I think that this is all music to the ears of NRI. So we'll probably see, and I've been saying this for some time, we'll probably see a shift in voting pattern of NRIs and Indians after this election. I think a lot of people have said that to us when we've talked to them, that they've been voting for Democrats, but they might be switching their allegiance to voting for the Republican Party, and more specifically for Donald Trump.
Right. Thanks so much, Rohit, for joining us.